Have you been laying sleepless at night wondering how the heck are video games made? Then you have come to the right place. Today we're making our first game, and since imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, we'll be imitating Geometry Dash. So let's take a look at the game. We have a square that moves to the right at a constant speed, and the player is able to press a button to make the square jump. We then have spikes that kill the player, and we have different types of platforms that the player can jump on. And there you have it, let's get started. We'll be using the Godot Game Engine to make our game. I'm using version 4.3, so if you have any other version, some small changes can be expected, but it shouldn't affect things too much. When you've downloaded the engine, just start it up and create a new project. We're now in the Godot editor. If we try to press play to run the project, we get this error message saying that no main scene has been defined. Select one. We haven't created one yet, so that's what we'll have to do now. Everything in Godot is made up of these things called scenes. So your player will be a scene, your level will be a scene, and so on. And the cool thing about this is that scenes can contain other scenes, which is how we will be able to connect everything in the game together. We'll create a scene of type node, which will be the main entry of our game program. The main scene is basically the root of our game. Everything else we want in our game will have to be created as a child of this scene. We now have a scene with a single node, which we will rename to main. If we now try to run the game, we get the same error message, but now the button to select current is available. Let's press the button. It first wants us to save the main scene that we created, so let's do that. After that, it runs the game. And as you can see, it's empty. Let's start. Let's change the view to a 2D view, and let's create a new scene that will contain our level. This new scene can inherit from node 2D. That basically gives it a position in 2D space. Let's rename this node to level. In the level, we know that we want to have a player, some spikes, platforms, and so on. Let's start by adding a player. We can either press on this plus sign up here, or we can right-click our node and select Add Child Node. For our player, we want to create a character body 2D. We get this warning message here. It says that the node has no shape, so it can't collide or interact with other objects. Consider adding a collision shape 2D. So let's do that. And now we get another warning saying that a shape must be provided for this collision shape. Our character will be a square, so let's select a rectangle shape 2D. Now we have a collision shape. If we run our program now, it's still empty. And that is because we don't have any graphics connected to the character yet. So let's do that. Add the child node to the character body 2D, select the sprite 2D. The sprite needs a texture. Before we can add a texture, we need to add the assets into our game. Let's create a new folder here and call it assets. I'm going to use assets created by KenNL, and it is the abstract platformer pack. There's a link in the description. I will extract the blue player from the abstract platformer pack and paste that in there. So as you can see, we have a folder called blue player, and in that one we have a bunch of images. We have a sprite for when the player ducks, dies, falls, and so on. Let's add one of these to our player sprite. If we run our game now, we can see up in the corner we have 1/4 of the player showing. And this is because you can see Godot renders the game. You can see this faint blue line. That is the game view. So if we move our player down here and replay, now he's more in the middle. So you can see that our sprite is showing. Let's reset that movement. Now we want to add some geometry that our player will walk on. So let's go to our level, add a child node, add a TileMapLayer, create a tileset, configure a source for our tileset. I've added this tile sheet as well, which is basically a bigger texture containing a bunch of small squares that we can draw out using a TileMapLayer. Add a source for the tileset, click Atlas and select our tile sheet. Godot asks if it wants us to automatically create tiles in the atlas. Let's press no. Now we can manually select which tiles we want from the tile sheet. So let's select these three, switch back to the tile map. Now we see that they are enabled. If we select any one of these, we will be able to draw them on this grid that is highlighted here. So let's select the middle one. And as you can see, we can start drawing our level. As I said previously, the center of the game is still inside this square. So we need to move our whole level to center it in the screen. So let's mark the level. Let's go to transform. If we play our game now, we can see we have our player and we have a small platform. But now we want him to fall on the platform and we want the platform to catch him. So let's add logic for that. Highlight our character body 2D, attach a new script. Let's name the script player. Let's delete this code. We will write this ourselves. So let's start adding some code for our player. Let's name our player script using class name. This is so that we can use this script in other places of our code, and that code will then know which functions we have defined here. Let's create a variable for our walk speed. Adding export makes it possible to change that value in the editor. Let's add a variable for our gravity. Let's hook up to the physics process, add gravity to our y velocity, times delta to make it frame independent, add walk speed to our x velocity, and then finally call move and slide. This will make the character body 2D actually move. Let's run our game and see what happens. So the character falls through the level. We need to add collision to our tile map. Go back to the tile map layer. Let's add a physics layer. If we now go to our tile set, press the select tab. Let's select this tile. Expand physics, physics layer 0. Let's start drawing the whole tile. So now we've added a physics layer to our tile. Let's do that with the other two tiles. If we try playing our game now, we see that the character walks on the level, but the collision seems a bit off. Let's check our collision shape. Let's fit it to our player. Let's run again. And there we go. We have a player moving. Now let's add a spike. Go to our level, add a child node, add an area 2D node. Let's add a collider. And let's add a shape. We'll keep it simple, we'll add a rectangle shape. We need to add a sprite. We can see that we have spikes in our tile sheet. So we'll add a atlas texture, expand that, load in our tile sheet. And we obviously don't want the whole tile sheet as a sprite. So we need to press this edit region button. Navigate to the spikes you want to use, and then just draw a rectangle around them like so, and close that. And now we have spikes. Let's fit the collision shape to the spikes. And there we go. Now we need to add some code that kills the player when we collide with the spikes. Let's add a script to our spike. Let's name the script spike. What we want to do now is use something called signals. So if we press our area 2D, we press the node tab, we can see that we have a few signals that will fire when specific events occur. We have a signal that's called body entered, and this will be called when the player collides with the spike area 2D. So let's double click this. And now we need to select the method that will be called, select our area 2D, and press connect. This will create a function for us. And this green icon here shows that it's connected to the area 2D. When the player collides with the spike, we want to reload the level. So let's add a script to the main node. Let's call it main. And let's define a function that reloads a level. Let's also add a class name to this script. Let's go back to the spike. Let's check if the body that's entered is the player. And if it is, we'll drag this main into the script. And let's cast it as main. And now we'll be able to use the function defined in our main script, reload the level. So now let's jump into our main script and let's write this reload level function. To be able to reload this level, we'll first need to save it as a packed scene. The way we can do that is by dragging it down to our assets and naming it level.tscn. Now you can see that the level is defined somewhere else. We just have a reference to it here in our main node. Let's delete it for now and try reloading it from script. We'll want a reference to the current level, so let's add that. We'll also have to load the packed scene that we saved of the level. So let's create a var, name it level scene, and assign it to preload. And now let's try to find our level TSCN asset. There it is. And this complains because we don't have anything called the level. We haven't created a script for the level yet. So let's remove this. Let's add in the function ready. This is run as soon as the node is created. So when main loads, we want to load the level scene and we want to assign it to current level. And we do that by calling instantiate on the level scene and assign that to current level. Now, whenever we want to reload the level, we want to destroy the current level and reload it as we did in our ready function. There we go. Let's see if this works then. Nothing happens. And the reason nothing happens is because we forgot to add the current level to our main node as a child. And we'll need to do this as well when we reload. Let's run the game. And there you go. The player hits the spikes and the level reloads. And now we need to add a jump for the player so that he isn't stuck in this endless loop of death. What we have to do first is go into our project settings, go into our input map, add a new action, call it jump, close it, go back to the player, add a variable for jump velocity, make it negative because the gravity is positive. Let's connect our player to the input function. This function is fired every time we get an input event. Let's check if the player is on the floor, and then we'll check if the event that is pressed is a jump action that we created earlier. And if it is, then set the Y velocity to jump velocity. Let's go back to the input settings. We need to add an event. So this is the actual button that will fire the jump event. I will use space, press OK, and close it. And now let's see if this works. If we run our game, we die, and then I will try to jump. And then we fall to our death. And there you have it, your first endless runner. I'll show you how it can look if you spend a bit more time adding levels, adding animations, sound, menus. Let's jump forward in time. So let's see how the game has evolved. We fleshed out the levels, added animations, and the goal, and the menu with the button, and then a few levels. And that's it. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, or if you would like to dive deeper into any other subject concerning Godot or game development. As I said previously, I'll put the code on my GitHub, and you can find the link in the video description. Thanks for watching.